There are places on Earth where money cannot buy you a ticket, places where the doors are welded shut, guarded by military force, or protected by nature itself. Behind these walls lie secrets that could rewrite history, destroy ecosystems, or end your life in seconds. From ancient toxic traps to modern doomsday bunkers, here are 12 doors that will never be opened. The year is 1986. The world has just witnessed the most catastrophic nuclear disaster in history. But while the fires above the Chernobyl reactor were extinguished and the smoke cleared, a new, silent horror was being born in the pitch-black darkness beneath the earth. Months after the explosion, a team of scientists, draped in heavy protective gear that offered little more than the illusion of safety, descended into the flooded radioactive catacombs under reactor number 4. They were hunting for the reactor's fuel. It had vanished from the core, and they needed to know where it had gone. What they found in the steam-filled corridor 217-2 was not just fuel. It was a monster. In the corner of a maintenance room, they stumbled upon a massive, black, glassy mass. It had oozed out of a steam distribution pipe like toothpaste from a tube, solidifying into a grotesque, wrinkled shape. It looked organic, almost alive, as if a creature from another dimension had clawed its way into our reality and frozen in place. Because of its strange, heavy appearance and the way it seemed to stomp heavily on the concrete, the terrified scientists gave it a name that sounds innocent, but carries a legacy of death: the elephant's foot. But do not let the name fool you. This object is the single most dangerous piece of waste on the face of the planet. It is a corium lava flow, a hellish mixture of melted nuclear fuel, sand, concrete, and the steel of the reactor vessel itself. When it was first discovered, the radiation emitting from this mass was so intense that it defied measurement. The air around it wasn't just hot, it was electrically charged with death. Calculations showed that standing just 1 meter away from this sleeping beast for a mere 30 seconds would cause dizziness and fatigue a week later. 2 minutes would cause your cells to begin hemorrhaging, and 5 minutes, just 300 seconds, meant inevitable agonizing death within 2 days. It was the Medusa of the modern age. To look upon it with your own naked eyes was to sign your own death warrant. Even the cameras used to photograph it failed. The radiation was so extreme that it destroyed the film, leaving the few existing images grainy and distorted, as if ghosts were interfering with the lens. When scientists tried to take a sample, drills couldn't scratch it. It was harder than steel. In a desperate move, they had to bring in a police marksman to shoot the foot with an armor-piercing rifle just to break off a tiny fragment for analysis. Today, nearly 40 years later, the elephant's foot still lurks in the darkness of the basement. It is no longer as hot as it once was, but it remains lethal. It is still warm, radiating a ghostly heat into the freezing tomb of the sarcophagus. And terrifyingly, it is slowly eating its way through the concrete foundation, sinking deeper into the earth, threatening to poison the groundwater below. The heavy steel doors leading to this corridor are sealed tight, welded shut, and guarded by the ghost of a dead city. They are locked not to protect the treasure inside from thieves, but to protect the human race from the abomination that lies in wait. But while the doors of Chernobyl are welded shut to protect humanity from the monster inside, there is another door in the heart of Europe that is locked for the exact opposite reason. It guards a treasure so fragile that human breath alone is enough to destroy it, a place where we are the monsters that must be kept out. Imagine for a moment that you are a teenager in the French countryside. It is the autumn of 1940. You and your friends are chasing a dog into the woods when you stumble upon a hole in the ground, hidden beneath the tangled roots of a fallen tree. You squeeze through the narrow opening, sliding down into the cool, damp darkness, lighting a match to see where you have fallen. And as the flame flickers to life, the shadows on the walls begin to dance. You are not alone. Surrounding you, thundering across the limestone ceiling in vibrant shades of red, yellow, and black, are hundreds of massive bulls, wild horses, and stags. You have just discovered the Sistine Chapel of prehistory, the Lascaux Caves. For 17,000 years, these masterpieces remained sealed in a perfect, airtight time capsule, untouched by the sun, untouched by time, and most importantly, untouched by man. When the news broke, the world was mesmerized. Tourists flocked to the site by the thousands, eager to gaze upon the dawn of human creativity. But they brought something with them that the ancient spirits of the cave could not withstand. With every breath, every heartbeat, and every drop of sweat, the visitors began to change the atmosphere. They brought heat. They brought carbon dioxide. They brought life to a place that belonged to the dead. First came the green sickness, a creeping algae that began to stain the walls. Then came the white sickness, a calcite crystal growth. But the true horror arrived later. Mysterious black spots began to spread like a cancer across the great hall of the bulls. A black mold, ancient and resilient, had been awakened from its slumber. It was as if the cave itself was fighting back, an immune system rejecting the virus of humanity. In 1963, the heavy steel doors were slammed shut forever. The cave was placed under a strict quarantine that remains to this day. Now, deeper inside the hill, the silence is absolute. A high-tech surveillance system monitors the temperature to the fraction of a degree. Only a handful of chosen scientists are permitted to enter, and even then, only for a few minutes a year. They must descend into the dark wearing full biological hazmat suits, moving like astronauts on a hostile planet, terrified that a single cough could wipe out history. Rumors persist among the locals that the mold is not just a fungus, but something far older, a biological curse released by breaking the seal of the sanctuary. The air inside is thick, heavy with the weight of thousands of years, and the darkness feels possessive. It is a place where time has been forcibly stopped, a room locked not to hide a weapon, but to save a memory from fading into oblivion. But while the silence of the French cave is born of a desperate need for preservation, there is another silence, just a few hundred miles away across the border in Italy, that is born of pure, unadulterated terror. We are leaving the darkness of the earth to travel to an island where the quarantine isn't for rocks or paintings, but for the souls of the damned, a place where the soil itself is said to be made of human ash. Venice is known to the world as the city of romance, a floating masterpiece of canals, gondolas, and masquerade balls. But every light casts a shadow, and hidden in the thick gray mists of the Venetian lagoon, just a few miles from the tourist-filled St. Mark's Square, lies a dark reflection of Venice, an island that does not appear on tourist maps, a place that the locals whisper about with a shudder, calling it the Island of No Return. This is Poveglia. To approach Poveglia by boat is to feel the temperature drop. The air here feels stagnant, heavy with a metallic taste that coats the back of your throat. For centuries, this small patch of land served as a dumping ground for the unwanted, a purgatory for the diseased. When the Black Death swept through Europe, turning cities into graveyards, the authorities of Venice grew desperate. They dragged the sick, the dying, and even those merely suspected of infection out of their homes, and threw them onto boats bound for Poveglia. It was a one-way trip. Thousands of men, women, and children were dumped here to rot. Day and night, massive pyres burned the bodies of the dead, the smoke choking the lagoon. Historians estimate that over 160,000 souls were burned on this tiny island. The legacy of this massacre is physically present beneath your feet. The soil of Poveglia is unique. It is sticky, gray, and unsettling to the touch. Legend says that the top layer of the earth is composed of 50% human ash. Even today, the few daredevils who sneak onto the island report that if you kick the dirt, you are likely to unearth a charred fragment of a human rib or a blackened tooth. But the horror didn't end with the plague. In the 1920s, the decaying buildings were repurposed into a mental asylum. It was the perfect place to hide the broken members of society, far from prying eyes. The patients here began to scream at night, terrified, claiming they were being tortured by the charred ghosts of the plague victims. But who listens to the insane? Their pleas were ignored. The darkness deepened with the arrival of the asylum's head doctor. Stories tell of a man consumed by madness himself, a butcher who performed crude lobotomies on his patients using hand drills and hammers, trying to find the source of their madness inside their skulls. He operated in the bell tower, the highest point of the island, where the screams would be carried away by the wind, but the island eventually claimed him too. The legend goes that the spirits of those he tortured drove him to the top of that very tower and pushed him off. He survived the fall, only to be swallowed by a strange, unnatural mist that rose from the ground and choked the life out of him. Today, the asylum stands in ruin. The windows are shattered like empty eye sockets, and vines are slowly crushing the brickwork. It is strictly forbidden to visit. The Italian police patrol the waters, and local fishermen refuse to cast their nets near the shore, terrified of pulling up human bones instead of fish. The bell was removed from the tower decades ago, yet on quiet, foggy nights, people across the lagoon swear they can still hear it tolling, a hollow, ghostly sound ringing out across the water. Poveglia is a monument to the death of the past, a place where the earth is poisoned by history, but our next destination is the exact opposite. We are leaving the rotting warmth of the Mediterranean and heading north, far beyond the Arctic Circle, to a place built not to hide the dead, but to save the living. We are going to a fortress of ice, where a door has been locked to withstand the end of the world itself. We leave the haunted waters of Italy and fly thousands of miles north, crossing the Arctic Circle to a place where the sun does not rise for 4 months of the year. This is Spitsbergen, a frozen archipelago in the Norwegian Sea. It is a land of brutal extremes, where polar bears outnumber humans, and the wind howls like a banshee across the endless white tundra. Here, jutting out of the side of a sandstone mountain like a monolith left by an alien civilization, stands a concrete wedge illuminated by glowing blue fiber optic lights. This is not a military base. It is not a secret laboratory. It is the most important room on planet Earth. They call it the Global Seed Vault, but the locals have a much more chilling name for it: the Doomsday Vault. The entrance looks like a portal to another dimension. As you approach the heavy steel doors, the only sound is the crunch of dry snow beneath your boots and the distant cracking of glaciers. Once you pass the first security checkpoint, you enter a tunnel that bores 120 meters deep into the permafrost. The walls are reinforced concrete, thick enough to withstand a direct nuclear strike or the impact of an asteroid. The air inside is artificially chilled to a bone-cracking -18 degrees Celsius. Even if the power fails, even if civilization collapses and the cooling systems die, the mountain itself will keep the treasure frozen for centuries. And what is this treasure guarded by motion sensors, blast-proof doors, and the harsh Arctic climate? It is not gold bars or government secrets. It is something far more valuable: Inside black plastic boxes, stacked on metal shelves in the silence of a cathedral, lie millions of seeds: wheat, corn, rice, barley, the genetic blueprints of human survival. This is the Noah's Ark of vegetation. The vault was built with a terrifying purpose. It is the backup drive for the world. Every time a war destroys a country, every time a plague wipes out a crop, or if the climate shifts so drastically that our food sources die, this vault is our last hope. It is designed to remain sealed. The opening of these doors is strictly regulated. In fact, the opening of the vault is technically a failure of humanity. It means we have lost something precious on the outside that can only be retrieved from the inside. It has already happened. When the war in Syria decimated the country's agriculture, scientists had to make the first ever withdrawal, retrieving ancient seeds to replant fields destroyed by bombs. It was a stark reminder that the apocalypse isn't a movie. For some, it is already here. Standing inside the main chamber, surrounded by the frost-covered boxes, you feel a profound sense of loneliness. It is a temple built for a future where we might not exist. The silence here is heavy, filled with the weight of potential life waiting for a spring that may only come after the fall of man. The keys to this place are held by only a few people on Earth. It is the ultimate insurance policy, a locked door that silently prays it never needs to be opened. But while the Doomsday Vault uses the cold to protect the future of humanity, there is another island on the other side of the world that uses lethal force to protect the past. We are trading the freezing winds of the Arctic for the humid, suffocating heat of the Indian Ocean. We are approaching a coastline where the keep out signs are not written in law, but in blood. A place where a single step on the beach is a declaration of war. From the silent, sterile ice of the north, we descend into the suffocating humidity of the Bay of Bengal. Floating in the turquoise waters of the Indian Ocean, there is an island that looks, from a distance, like a lost Eden. It is a perfect emerald jewel, ringed by white sand beaches and dense, vibrant jungle. But this beauty is a trap. If you were to sail your boat just a few miles too close to the shore, you would not be greeted with leis and cocktails. You would be greeted by the sharp hiss of an arrow flying out of the tree line, aimed with lethal precision at your throat. This is North Sentinel Island, the most forbidden place on the planet. It is not a military base, and there are no fences, but the boundary here is sharper than razor wire. It is the home of the Sentinelese people, a tribe that has lived in total isolation for nearly 60,000 years. Think about that number. They were there before the pyramids were built, before the Roman Empire rose and fell, before the invention of writing. They are the direct descendants of the first humans to walk out of Africa, and they have remained frozen in time, living in a bubble that history forgot. To land on this beach is to travel back to the Stone Age. The people here do not know how to make fire. They wait for lightning to strike and then guard the embers with their lives. They have never seen a wheel. They do not know what a country is or what the internet is. But they know one thing very clearly. They want us to stay away. Every attempt to make contact has been met with a hail of longbow arrows and spears. In 2004, after the devastating Indian Ocean tsunami, a helicopter flew over the island to check for survivors. It was met not by people waving for help, but by a lone warrior running onto the beach, firing arrows at the metal bird in the sky. In 2006, 2 fishermen who fell asleep and drifted onto the reef were slaughtered instantly, their bodies buried in the sand as a warning. And more recently, a young American missionary who tried to bring religion to the island met the same tragic fate. The Indian government has established a 3-mile exclusion zone around the island, enforced by the Navy. But this blockade is not just to protect us from their arrows. It is to protect them from us. You see, the Sentinelese are the most vulnerable people on Earth. Because they have been cut off from the rest of the human gene pool for millennia, they have no immunity to our modern world. A handshake, a sneeze, or even a gift left on the beach could carry a virus, the common flu or measles, that would sweep through their village like a biological weapon, wiping out their entire bloodline in a matter of days. We are the aliens. We are the plague. So, the island remains a blind spot on the map, a place where humanity is split in two by an invisible wall. It is a door that is locked from the outside by laws and patrol boats, and locked from the inside by fear and violence. It is the only place left where the modern world is not allowed to enter. But while the Sentinelese hide in the open, protected by the ocean and their primitive weapons, there is another group that hides in plain sight, protected by the most secretive and paranoid regime on the planet. We are leaving the vibrant jungle for the concrete grayness of a city where the lights go out at night. We are traveling to the capital of North Korea to stand before the doors of a seemingly boring office building that acts as the dark wallet of a dictator. We leave the primitive, untouched sands of the Indian Ocean and travel northeast, crossing the heavily militarized border into the most isolated nation in the modern world, North Korea. Here, in the heart of Pyongyang, amidst the brutalist concrete monuments and wide, empty boulevards, stands a building that looks entirely unremarkable. It sits just a stone's throw from the Workers' Party headquarters. It has no flashing neon signs, no grand entrance, and it doesn't appear on any official government organizational chart. To the few who dare to whisper its name, it is known simply as Office 39 or Room 39. If you were to walk past it, you would think it was just another dull administrative center full of filing cabinets and bored clerks. But behind those drab walls lies the financial heart of the Kim dynasty, a heart that pumps black blood through the global economy. Established in the 1970s, Office 39 is often called the court economy. Its sole purpose is to generate the hard foreign currency needed to buy luxury goods for the supreme leader and to fund the country's nuclear ambitions. But how does a country cut off from global trade make billions of dollars? The answer lies in what happens inside this room. Intelligence agencies believe that Office 39 is the headquarters of a global criminal enterprise run by the state itself. Inside these offices, the best mathematicians, chemists, and hackers of the regime work in total secrecy. This is where the infamous supernote was allegedly born, a counterfeit $100 bill so perfect, so chemically identical to the real thing, that even the U.S. Federal Reserve had trouble telling them apart. But it's not just money. It is a hub for high-stakes insurance fraud, the production of high-purity methamphetamine exported under diplomatic cover, and sophisticated cyber heists that steal millions from foreign banks in the blink of an eye. The people who work here are the elite of the elite. They live in luxury compared to the starving population outside, driving Mercedes and drinking cognac. But they are also prisoners. They know too much. A job in Office 39 is a life sentence. You cannot resign, and you cannot leave. Your silence is bought with comfort and insured by the threat of total erasure. The doors to this organization are guarded not just by soldiers, but by a wall of silence that no journalist or investigator has ever managed to breach. It is a bureaucratic black hole where international laws go to die, and where the dark money that keeps a dictatorship alive is washed clean. It is a locked room that proves crime doesn't just pay, it can run a country. But while Office 39 hides the dirty money of a dictatorship in the shadows of a city, there is another facility, located in the greatest democracy on earth, that hides its secrets under the blinding glare of the sun. We are crossing the Pacific Ocean to land in the scorching deserts of Nevada, where the government denies the existence of a place that everyone knows is there. We are driving down a long, dusty road toward a gate that leads to the most famous secret in the universe. From the gray concrete shadows of Pyongyang, we travel to the blinding, shimmering heat of the American West. We find ourselves on a long, dusty highway in Nevada, dubbed the extraterrestrial highway, stretching endlessly into the horizon. To your left and right, there is nothing but sagebrush and silence. But do not be fooled. In this emptiness, you are being watched closer than anywhere else on Earth. Every few miles, hidden among the cactus, are seismic sensors buried in the dirt. They can detect the vibration of your footsteps from miles away. High-tech sniffers analyze the air for the chemical signature of human sweat or the exhaust of a car engine. And on the distant ridges, you might catch a glimpse of a white pickup truck with tinted windows, sitting perfectly still. The men inside are not police. They are not military. They are private contractors known simply as camo dudes, and they have the authority to detain you, or worse. You have reached the perimeter of the Groom Lake facility, known to the world as Area 51. For decades, the United States government denied this place even existed. It was a blank spot on the map, a ghost in the database. When they finally admitted it was real, they claimed it was just a testing ground for aircraft. But the truth is buried much deeper, literally. Just south of the main base lies an area known as Sector S4, built into the side of the Papoose mountain range. According to whistleblowers who claim to have worked there, the hangar doors are designed to blend perfectly into the rock face, disguised by sand and texture, so that satellites passing overhead see nothing but a mountain. But when those camouflage doors slide open, they reveal the crown jewels of the military-industrial complex. This is not just about little green men. This is about physics. It is rumored that inside S4, scientists are working on reverse engineering technology that shouldn't exist. Propulsion systems that move without exhaust, aircraft that can make right-angle turns at Mach 10, and materials that can change shape on command. The secrecy here is so intense that the employees are reportedly flown in on planes with blackened windows, so they don't even know exactly where they are. The signs on the perimeter fence are crystal clear. Use of deadly force authorized. They are not protecting a runway. They are protecting a shift in the paradigm of reality. Whatever is behind those mountain doors could change the balance of power on Earth overnight. It is a place where the future is being built in the dark, and the price of admission is your silence. But while the U.S. military uses technology and intimidation to keep intruders out, nature has its own way of saying, "Do not enter," and it doesn't need fences or guards. We are leaving the dry, scorched desert of Nevada and flying south to the lush, green coast of Brazil. We are heading to an island that looks like paradise from the air, but where setting foot on the ground is a death sentence delivered by 1,000 fangs. We trade the dry, watchful eyes of the Nevada desert for the humid, salty breeze of the South Atlantic. Approximately 90 miles off the coast of São Paulo, Brazil, rising from the sparkling turquoise waters, lies a rugged, emerald-green island called Ilha da Queimada Grande. From the deck of a passing ship, it looks like a pristine tropical paradise, a place where you might want to drop anchor, swim to the white sandy shore, and explore the lush rainforest. But this island is a lie. The locals whisper its true name with a mixture of fear and respect: Snake Island. And the Brazilian Navy has issued a permanent, non-negotiable decree. Landing here is absolutely forbidden. The danger here is not a soldier with a gun, but a predator perfected by evolution. The island is the only home in the world for the golden lancehead viper. Trapped here when rising sea levels cut the island off from the mainland thousands of years ago, these snakes evolved to be smaller, faster, and infinitely more deadly than their cousins. Because there were no ground animals to hunt, they learned to snatch birds right out of the air. To do this, they developed a venom that is terrifyingly potent. It had to kill instantly before the bird could fly away. The result is a poison that is hemotoxic. It physically melts human flesh. A bite causes rapid necrosis, dissolving the tissue around the wound, followed by brain hemorrhage and kidney failure. And the terrifying part isn't just the venom, it's the sheer number of them. The island is so infested that researchers estimate there is between 1 and 5 deadly vipers for every single square meter. Imagine standing in a room where every step you take lands on a coiled golden death trap. They are on the ground, camouflaged under the leaves. They are draped over the tree branches at eye level. If you were to walk into the forest, you wouldn't just be bitten once, you would be swarmed. The island stands empty today, save for a solitary white lighthouse that blinks automatically to warn ships away. But it wasn't always automated. Decades ago, a lighthouse keeper lived here with his wife and 3 children. They were the only humans on the rock. One night, legend says, they forgot to close a window. The vipers slithered in. The family woke up to a nightmare of hissing shadows. They fled their cottage, running frantically through the dark forest toward their boat on the shore. They never made it. When the Navy arrived to deliver supplies weeks later, they found the family scattered across the path, their bodies claimed by the island. Since then, the lighthouse has been automated, and the island has been sealed. It is a biological exclusion zone where nature has hung a "Do Not Disturb" sign, written in venom. It is a place where humans are not at the top of the food chain. We are just prey. But while Snake Island is a labyrinth of natural terror under the open sky, there is another labyrinth built by human hands that winds its way deep beneath the frozen earth of a major capital city. We are leaving the tropical heat for the bitter cold of Russia. We are descending below the streets of Moscow to find a train line that doesn't appear on any map. We leave the humid, venomous forests of Brazil and descend into the biting cold of the Russian winter. In Moscow, the subway system is not just transportation. It is an art museum. The stations are palaces of marble, lit by massive chandeliers and adorned with statues of Soviet heroes. Every day, 9 million people flood these halls, rushing to work, oblivious to what lies beneath the soles of their shoes. But whisper the name Metro 2 to a Muscovite, and their expression will change. It is an open secret that beneath the glittering public subway, there exists a second, deeper, and far darker network of tunnels. Codenamed D6 by the KGB, this shadow system was born from the paranoia of Joseph Stalin. As the Cold War heated up, the Soviet leadership needed a way to escape a nuclear apocalypse. They didn't just build a bunker, they built a parallel city. This secret metro is rumored to run much deeper than the public lines, sometimes up to 200 meters underground. It has no ticket booths. It has no schedules. It connects the Kremlin directly to the FSB headquarters, the Ministry of Defense, and a vast underground town at Ramenki, capable of housing 15,000 people for decades while the surface world burns. The existence of Metro 2 has never been officially confirmed, but the evidence is terrifyingly real. Urban explorers, known in Russia as diggers, have spent years mapping the anomalies. They speak of heavy steel gates in the public tunnels that lead nowhere. They describe staircases that spiral down into endless darkness, blocked by armed guards who stand silently in the shadows. And then, there are the ghost trains. Late at night on the public lines, commuters sometimes see a strange, short train pass through the station without stopping. It has no markings. The windows are blackened or curtained. It moves silently, carrying passengers who do not exist to destinations that are not on the map. Those who have tried to find the entrances often regret it. Stories circulate of explorers who manage to pry open a rusted maintenance door, only to find themselves in a clean, well-lit tunnel patrolled by men in gray suits. These intruders are not handed over to the police. They are handed over to the security services, and their cameras, and sometimes the explorers themselves, are never seen again. Metro 2 is a reminder that in some places, there are two realities, the one for the common people and the one for the masters of the world. It is a darker underworld designed to keep the elite alive while the rest of us perish. But while the Russian underground is built to sustain life, our next destination is an underground chamber built to sustain death. We are traveling east to the heart of China to stand before a mountain that hides a 2,000-year-old secret. We are going to a tomb that is protected not by soldiers, but by a river of liquid silver. We trade the cold steel tunnels of the Russian underground for the dusty, sun-baked plains of central China. Here, in the Shanxi province, lies one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in human history, and one of its most terrifying unsolved mysteries. In the spring of 1974, a group of humble farmers was digging a well to combat a drought. Their shovels struck something hard. They expected a rock, but instead, they pulled up the clay head of a warrior, staring back at them with a stoic expression. They had stumbled upon the terracotta army. Since that day, archaeologists have unearthed thousands of life-sized clay soldiers, horses, and chariots, each with a unique face, standing in battle formation. But here is the chilling truth that few tourists realize. The terracotta army is just the perimeter guard. They are merely the outer defense line. The real treasure, and the real danger, lies a mile to the west, under a massive man-made pyramid covered in trees and vegetation. This is the final resting place of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. Qin Shi Huang was a man obsessed with immortality. He conquered 6 warring states to unify China, but he could not conquer death. So he spent 38 years building a subterranean city that would serve as his palace in the afterlife. Ancient historical texts, written by the grand historian Sima Qian a century after the emperor's death, describe a tomb filled with rare artifacts and wonderful treasure. But they also describe a terrifying defense system. The chronicles claim that the artisans were ordered to install mechanical crossbows, primed to shoot anyone who dared to break the seal. But crossbows rot and wood decays. The true trap was elemental. The texts speak of 100 rivers of mercury, created by mechanical pumps to simulate the Yangtze and Yellow rivers, flowing into a vast ocean of liquid quicksilver. For centuries, modern historians dismissed this as a legend, a poetic exaggeration. They were wrong. In recent years, scientists used ground-penetrating radar and took soil samples from the earth directly above the burial mound. The results were shocking. The levels of mercury in the soil were hundreds of times higher than normal. The legend is real. Somewhere beneath that hill, there is likely a toxic lake of liquid metal that has been sealed in darkness for 2,200 years. If we were to bore a hole into the tomb today, the pressure would release a cloud of poisonous mercury vapor that would not only kill the intruders, but would also escape into the atmosphere, contaminating the surrounding countryside. Furthermore, the rush of fresh air would instantly destroy the delicate silk and paintings inside, turning priceless history into dust in seconds. So, the Chinese government has made a decision. The tomb will remain closed. The first emperor sleeps in his toxic sarcophagus, protected by a poison that keeps him safe from the curiosity of the modern world. It is a Pandora's box that science is too afraid to open. But while the Emperor of China built a fortress to preserve his own body and his empire, there is a group in the United States that has built a fortress to preserve the memory of everyone else. We are crossing the Pacific Ocean to the rugged landscapes of Utah, to a mountain that has been hollowed out to hold the names of the dead. We leave the ancient, silent, poisonous rivers of China and fly across the Pacific to the rugged red rock spine of the American West. We are driving up Little Cottonwood Canyon in Utah, a place of breathtaking natural beauty. But if you look up at the sheer granite cliffs, you will see something that looks like it belongs in a James Bond movie. Carved directly into the side of the solid rock face are massive reinforced concrete portals. These are the gates to the Granite Mountain Records Vault. At first glance, it looks like a military bunker designed to launch missiles, and in terms of durability, it is. The facility was constructed in the 1960s at the height of the Cold War, built to withstand a direct nuclear hit. The entrance is guarded by two steel doors that weigh 14 tons each. They are so perfectly balanced that they can be closed with a single finger, yet they are strong enough to seal the mountain hermetically against radiation, biological weapons, and massive floods. But the armed guards patrolling the fence aren't protecting gold, and they aren't protecting weapons. They are protecting names. This facility belongs to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Inside, buried 600 feet beneath the stone, is the world's largest library of the dead. In climate-controlled chambers, there are billions of images on microfilm and digital servers containing the genealogical records of humanity, birth certificates, marriage licenses, death records. There is a very high probability that your name, or the names of your great-grandparents, are stored on a reel of film inside this mountain. Why such extreme security for family trees? The Church believes in the baptism of the dead, the idea that ancestors can be saved in the afterlife. To do this, they need names, and they believe that these records are so sacred that they must be preserved for all eternity, even if civilization on the surface is wiped out. The vault is a self-sustaining city. It has its own water reservoir, its own power plant, and air filtration systems that can run for months without outside contact. It is a dry, sterile, and silent tomb for information, designed to outlast the apocalypse. For the average person, getting inside is impossible. The tours stopped years ago. Now, it is a fortress of solitude where history is frozen on celluloid, waiting for a judgment day that the builders are fully prepared for. But while the vault in Utah uses 14-ton steel doors and solid granite to protect a library of paper, our final destination uses nothing but a single flimsy wooden door and the terrified faith of one man to protect the most powerful artifact in human history. We are traveling to the Horn of Africa, to a small, dusty chapel where the air hums with a power that science cannot explain. We leave the high-tech, nuclear-proof fortress of the American West and travel back in time, to the dusty, sun-scorched highlands of Ethiopia. Here, in the ancient city of Axum, the air smells of frankincense and old stone. Amidst the ruins of a fallen empire stands the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion, and next to it, surrounded by a simple iron fence, is a small, unassuming chapel that looks like it could be knocked down by a strong wind. But do not let the humble architecture fool you. This building is the Fort Knox of faith. Inside this small stone room, according to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, lies the most significant and powerful artifact in human history, the Ark of the Covenant. The legendary gold-plated chest constructed by Moses, containing the original stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. For centuries, armies, emperors, and treasure hunters, including the inspiration for Indiana Jones, have searched the globe for it. But the locals here will tell you it isn't lost. It is right behind that wooden door. But unlike the other places on our list, this door is not guarded by lasers, machine guns, or venomous snakes. It is guarded by one man. He is known as the Guardian. He is a monk chosen by his predecessors for a single task, to watch over the Ark. Once he is appointed, he can never leave the chapel grounds. He will never walk the streets of his city again. He will never see his family again. He sleeps in the chapel, prays in the chapel, and eventually he will die in the chapel. And here is where the story turns from religious devotion to something far more unsettling. The guardians rarely live long. Those who have seen them report that the monks appear to age at an unnatural speed. Their eyes often turn milky white with cataracts, and they suffer from debilitating illnesses that look suspiciously like the symptoms of radiation poisoning. The locals believe this is the price of being close to the divine. They say the Ark vibrates with a holy fire that is too powerful for a mortal body to withstand. It is a source of energy that slowly burns the life out of the man sworn to protect it. No one is allowed to enter. Not the patriarch of the church, not the president of Ethiopia, not even the Pope. In World War II, when Italian soldiers tried to force their way in, the entire population of the city stood in front of the door, unarmed, ready to die, rather than let the sanctity of the room be breached. It is the ultimate forbidden door. Whether it hides a biblical superweapon, a radioactive meteorite, or simply an empty room filled with dust and faith, we will likely never know. And perhaps that is for the best. From the radioactive basements of Chernobyl to the silent ice of the Arctic, and from the snake-infested islands of Brazil to this lonely chapel in Africa, we have stood before 12 doors that remain firmly shut against the world. But as we stare at these locks and warning signs, we have to ask ourselves a final, uncomfortable question. Are these doors locked to keep us out? Or are they locked to keep something else in? We live in an era where we believe we have access to everything. With a smartphone in our pocket, we can access the sum of human knowledge in seconds. With Google Earth, we can zoom into almost any backyard on the planet. We feel like the masters of this world, believing that there are no more secrets left to discover. But as we have seen today, that is a lie. These 12 doors remind us of a humbling truth. The map is still full of blank spots. There are still shadows where the light of science cannot reach, and there are still boundaries that we are not meant to cross. From the radioactive tombs of our own making to the ancient sanctuaries protected by curses and venom, these places serve as silent warnings. They tell us that some knowledge is too dangerous to hold, and some pasts are too terrible to revisit. Now, I leave you with a question, a choice. If you were given a master key that could safely open just one of these doors, which one would you choose? Would you expose the extraterrestrial secrets of Area 51? Would you risk the toxic trap of the Chinese emperor to see his face? Would you demand the truth from the Vatican archives or the Mormon vault? Or would you choose to leave them all locked, respecting the silence of the unknown? Go to the comments below and tell me which door you would open. But remember the lesson of Pandora's box.